Respected panelists, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone watching us right now from different parts of the world. Namaste. Welcome to the joint webinar hosted by Center for Diplomacy and Development and Japan International Cooperation Agency. This webinar is supported by nepaldubai.com, Noble Business Review, Neiman, dcnepal.com, risemedianepal.com, Kitab Yatra, and Mero Network. Before I start the webinar, let me offer you all a brief introduction of Center for Diplomacy and Development. CDD is a think tank on the track to diplomacy, established in February 2018. Its main activities are focused on holding seminars, similar webinars, workshops, hosting talk programs, undertaking research studies, creating forums, as well as contributing to promote mutual understanding between foreign community and Nepali community. The topic of today's webinar is Good Governance, a Prerequisite for National Development. As you all are aware, good governance is a very important issue in our country and in all the countries. Today, we have invited eminent personalities as speakers, and I hope their presentation will be very fruitful for us to enrich our knowledge on the topic. And it is my privilege to be the moderator of this webinar. I, Purnima Subedi, on behalf of CDD, would like to extend a very warm welcome to all the respected speakers and to all the participants. Before we start, as a moderator, I would like to mention a few code of conducts with respect to this webinar. All our speakers can mute and unmute themselves whenever they wish to speak, share the slides, or record the live webinar. Being mindful about the time limit, we only have 15 to 20 minutes time for the presentation. So each speaker will be given 15 to 20 minutes for the presentation. The speaker will be notified with a bell ring when there is only 3 minutes left for the presentation. We will not take any questions in between the presentation. However, we'll take a few questions at the end of the session. All the participants' mic will be muted, so the question should be put forward in the Zoom chat box or in the comment section of Facebook Live. Please keep your questions short, precise, and relevant to the topic. Lengthy and irrelevant questions will be clubbed. To begin with now, may I invite Mr. Mohan Krishna Shrestha, former ambassador of Nepal to France and founder president of CDD, to deliver his welcome remarks. Floor is yours, sir.
Unmute, please.
Mohan, sir. I think your mic is on mute.
Yeah, sorry, that is a problem. Sorry for that. Thank you, moderator Purnima ji. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, once again, thank you, moderator Purnima ji. Respected Professor Dr. Bisambar Pyakurial, Professor, former ambassador and founder chairman of Institute of Strategic and Socioeconomic Research, Ms. Padmani Pradhananga, President of Transparency International Nepal, Mr. Akimicho Okubo, Senior Representative, JICA Nepal Office, friends, guests, well-wishers at home and abroad, namaste, good evening, and good morning. First of all, on behalf of CDD, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you for attending this webinar, accepting our invitation. As you all know, CDD has been organizing such webinars from time to time on the issues of topical importance. Taking this opportunity, I also profusely thank and appreciate Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, and in particular its Chief Representative, Ms. Yumiko Asakuma, for extending support as a co-host of this webinar. Today we have as a topic, good governance, a prerequisite for national development. This is a very important issue in our country and beyond. Good governance indeed carry a large meaning. It can be applied even to a micro level from our home society, institution to the country. When there is good governance, there will be peace, stability, equanimity, and sense of ownership. In good governance, decision-making process play a pivotal role. Participation of the masses, consensus-oriented, accountable, transparent, responsiveness, effective and efficient administration, equitable and inclusive characters, plus rule of law are the main components requisite for good governance. Today we have with us three very eminent persons to speak on this theme. They bring with them a wealth of knowledge and information to share with us. I'm sure we all will benefit from their presentations. Dear friends, while we make a quick survey of the countries around the world, we find there are a few countries where good governance indeed has been a hallmark of the political system and administration, especially Scandinavian countries like Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden are largely cited as excellent examples of good governance in the world, while in our own recent region, countries like Japan, Singapore, and Korea are cited for good governance. Quality public life and rule of law are the main basic foundations of our successful good governance in these countries. Then a question arises, what governments must do to achieve the objectives of a good governance? It means that a country must possess institutions for public service which are efficient, corruption-free, and pro-public oriented. Countries' infrastructures, particularly in the fields of communication, education, health, and transportation, must be well built to serve the people better. Time demands that public services must improve, corrupt practices at public institutions must be controlled and even eliminated as much as possible. In this age of digitalization, it seems possible in the long run if there is a firm commitment of the government leadership to provide efficient and corruption-free services to the people. The target of good government might be achievable. Corruption is the main enemy of a good governance. Similarly, another aspect which needs careful attention of the government leadership is the maximum mobilization and utilization of the public resources for national development. It is but natural that governments raise funds from public through taxation and other means for investment in the development activities. Herein lies the need for carefulness not to misuse of public funds. Moreover, the money government borrows from foreign sources must also be very efficient and properly without any leakages. As borrowed money or funds are repaid from the taxes paid by the people, it becomes a very sacred duty for the government leadership to handle such funds with utmost care and attention. Money must be invested only in the viable projects which accrue direct benefit to the public. Dear friends, as our country is also marching in the path of economic development, we need good governance at all levels of public life and in the government machinery. I hope we'll be hearing more from our eminent speakers in a more focused and exemplary ways in this regard. With these few words, I once again thank our distinguished speakers and all our friends and guests for attending this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our first speaker today is Professor Dr. Biswambar Pyakuril. Let me present his brief introduction. Professor Pyakuril is an erudite person with high social standing. He is the founding chairman of Institute for Strategic and Socio-Economic Research based in Kathmandu. He has also served as ambassador of Nepal to Sri Lanka and Maldives. Almost for 40 years, he has taught as professor of economics at Tribhuvan University. Professor Pyakuril completed his postdoctoral research from the University of Maryland, College Park, USA. He has been a professional associate in the East-West Center, Honolulu, a social in residence of the Rockefeller Foundation in Italy, and a visiting scholar at IFPRI in Washington, DC. He is the chairman of Intergovernmental Organization, South Asia Cooperative Environmental Program, and a member of the Governing Council of Colombo Plan. Professor Pyakuril has been a member of Board of Nepal's Central Bank, chairman of High-Level Public Expenditure Commission of the Government of Nepal, a commissioner of the Independent South Asian Commission on Poverty Alleviation SARC. Professor Pyakuril has authored and edited 13 books and published hundreds of research articles in accredited national and international journals. Professor Pyakuril has been an international consultant to the World Bank, IFC, ADP, UNDP, UNCTAD, and many specialized agencies. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. First of all, let me sincerely thank Center for Diplomacy and Development for inviting me in this webinar and giving me access to your forum. I was looking forward to be here since awfully long time. So I'm happy this afternoon. Although, the issues under governance covers a wide spectrum of different perspectives, it will be extremely difficult for a university professor who spent more than 4 decades at university teaching So I used to take a lot of time, I always gave 2 classes a week and then continued my classes for 3 hours. So winding up this discussion program in 20 minutes would be a great challenge for me, but I will try my level best. So since you said that there will be a bell ringing to warn us about the time, so let me begin with defining the term what governance is like. Governance have, first of all, different forms. For instance, there is a national governance, there is a local governance, there is a corporate governance, there is international governance, and so forth. So the governance is, in fact, to me, it's a system by which an organization is controlled and operated, and also the mechanism by which uh, people are made accountable in theory. In corporate governance, it involves a set of relationships between a company's management, the board, and other stakeholders. I remember when I was in Kuala Lumpur some time ago, Prime Minister Mahathir had made an announcement that he talked about Malaysia Incorporated. And he goes like, Malaysia should work as a multinational company, and I am your CEO. So the Prime Minister was a CEO of a multilateral corporation, and the whole country was Malaysia Incorporated. So it indicates that the kind of emphasis he had been given for a better organization of the governance system is indicative of what he said. By definition, governance is the action, or I should say manner, of governing a state or organization, whatever. So the good governance is always considered to have a strength to measure how public institutions conduct public affairs activities, and they can manage public resources more efficiently and judiciously. So while measuring the outcome through the existing governance in Nepal, for example, let's talk about the high priority national pride project. Until now, we have 21 national pride project. Some studies had been done with regards to 12 national pride projects last year. The result that we got was really a miserable, pathetic with regards to the governance system. So to sum up the definition that we talked about briefly, the good governance is operated through the process of decision making and the process by which decisions are implemented or not implemented. So under the good governance, it is implemented. Under the bad governance, it is not implemented. World Bank has also come up with some indicators. The World Bank's, if you look at the World Bank's worldwide governance indicators, which we call WGI, with the data collected from almost 200 countries during the period of 15 years, 1996 through 2011. It provides information on 6 aggregate indicators like violence and accountability. They highly emphasize on these 6 indicators: government effectiveness, political stability in absence of violence, regulatory quality of the governance system, rule of the law, and control of corruption. And this report has tried its level best to elaborate, to establish linkages between these particular indicators with that of the anticipated outputs from the project. So United Nations ISCAP, based in Bangkok, also talks something about good governance, and they have offered 8 different characteristics. They go like, participatory, consensus oriented, accountable, transparent, responsive, effective and efficient, equitable and inclusive. There are a few indicators that may have been treated a bit differently with different results, but in most of the cases, whatever way we try to define governance has a strong and positive similarity, among different international financial institutions and UN agencies, either regional or global. So ADB also has a couple of observations. They highly emphasize on the critical bearing on economic and social outcomes. So they talk a lot, when they talk about the governance system, they talk about sustainable development goals. So important indicators under sustainable development goals. By now, most of the countries have already, indigenized sustainable development goals indicators into their national planning process. So just 1.5 years ago, that was probably the last physical meeting that we had internationally. Our vice chair also had represented that international forum organized by the United Nations. So I happened to be one of the speakers during that event. And after indigenization of the key indicators of SDGs in our governance system, the result was not very encouraging. In fact, we do have that result available at the National Planning Commission already. So development priority and good governance. Now let us try to establish some sort of link between the governance and development priority, because our title is Good Governance, a Prerequisite for National Development. Lately, the development priority has been public sector governance and anti-corruption, especially in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our Office of the Auditor General had brought out a long report last year, not this year's report I'm talking about. So it was identified there has been almost this year also, now we have very interesting and alarming findings with regards to the corruption in Nepal. So last year, the total amount, the missed opportunity that this country's treasury had was almost 3 trillion rupees. So it means that, if the governance system fails to control corruption, for instance, the size of the GDP, on the one hand, because of this pandemic, we already have a negative growth last year. And this year also, we are not very much hopeful. Asian Development Bank had brought about 2 major changes in their estimates. So, achieving 3% growth rate by Nepal would be a dream coming true, in our part. So when there is a shrink in the GDP and, tons of money goes out of the hand of the government because of the corruption, then talking about the overall welfare of the people and prosperity becomes a distant dream. So recovery and resilient service delivery was equally pronounced by different multilateral institutions as well, except the UN. We have a couple of empirical research done. The study that examines the connection between the worldwide governance indicators as developed by the World Bank itself, about which I told you. They have some very specific aggregate indicators, 6 aggregate indicators. So the study very recently examined the connection between the worldwide governance indicators in 111 high and low income developing countries. This study undertook the time series data beginning 1996 through 2018. So to see if indicators have a positive or negative effect on the per capita GDP and therefore our economy, of course. So was there a positive link between these indicators with the per capita GDP and economy as a whole? The overall finding was rule of law and control of corruption have a positive effect on developing countries' GDP, where voice and accountability had a small negative effect on GDP. So this is very interesting sort of findings. So the findings suggest rule of law and control of corruption is extremely important to drive economic growth. So this is available in Journal of Social and Economic Development, volume 23. The other studies, for instance, however, reveal the governance reforms have not always resulted in the expected improvements in development outcomes and poverty reduction. As the success of governance reforms is often conditional on political factors, However, bad governance impacts negatively on poor and institutions. So there is a strong and positive correlation between the political instability of the country and developmental outcome. The study offers some policy recommendations to the donor community, even by emphasizing on demand side governance, not top to bottom sort of approach, by emphasizing on demand side governance, as survey results is oftentimes promising where citizens have been brought into governance interventions. So government, the people do have their own sort of voices. So listening to their voice and linking their voices with the given indicators may give us some sort of different results. World Bank a couple of years ago had conducted a study, a voluminous study. It was part 1, part 2 on the voices of the poor. So exactly that is what been done. And governance, now I think Nepal's priority, coming back to Nepal's priority, I think as there is a big challenge to bring about the balances between the human life and economic recovery. Well, many of our development colleagues also are sometimes hopeful that Nepal would sooner be in a trajectory of V-shaped recovery. Well, in reality, V-shaped recovery is the V-size sort of achievements. Initially, because of the lockdown and the intensity of the pandemic, everything falls down. Like what happened in our case, tourism sector were almost dead. There is no hotel business going on, no trekking, no mountaineering, no river rafting, nothing. Similarly, on the other hand, the intensity of the infection was so high, government was just lost. Hospitalization problem, a problem developing in a new additional infrastructures had been a global problem that we know. But the countries where there had been a strong governance system developed already, it didn't take much time. Like, you'll be surprised to know, even though there has been so much casualties in India because of the pandemic, the estimates of the World Bank, ADB, and IMF lately, by the end of 2021, maybe there will be 1 or 2 percentage point growth higher in India compared to even China. So, where the bureaucracy is pretty strong, where the governance system is visible and accountable, things do change, So we shouldn't be saying like, other countries did well and then we couldn't do it because they also had a same supply side constraints, globally. But, when they did it, when there was a 1997 Southeast Asian currency crisis, when there was a 2008 global crisis, so I have 2 to 3 minutes left, right? So global crisis, and then what had happened? Even for the highly developed country, to bring back the employment regime at SAPE took almost 1.5 years. So here in Nepal, all of a sudden, what we say, like, if there has been a 1 percentage point higher growth this year, we go like, now Nepal will be on a path of V-shaped recovery. So we should be optimistic, but we should take this statistical information with caution. This is my suggestion. So our major focus now should be on maintenance of people's health by developing infrastructures, physical infrastructure. If you look at the budgetary allocation in Nepal's health sector and education sector, by principle, it has to be higher compared to other sectors. So the rate of growth of budgetary allocation in health and education has always been greater compared to other indicators, sectors in Nepal. So this year, for next 2 years, it is not very much surprising. We have a higher distribution. So merely, distributing cash liquidity for the people in hand and increasing the household income so that it may help consumers spending, and there should be a higher demand in the market by the individual consumer. So there is a question of aggregate supply versus aggregate demand, and the economy will be under the good shape. So if you don't do that, if you merely distribute the money, it will be like, there is a buzzword in development economics, we call it helicopter money. So, distributing liquidity in the hands of the people without any planning, without any good governance, it will be pretty much risky. It will be, the whole economy would be much more inflationary. With this word, if there is a floor open and then there comes a lot of other questions, I have a couple of dozens of issues to discuss, but I would be happy to spoil time for other speakers. With this, I would like to thank you again.
Thank you very much, sir. If anybody has questions, we'll take the questions at the end of the session. So we'll just continue with the speakers. Now, welcoming the next speaker, I would like to invite panelist Ms. Padmini Pradhananga. She's the first elected women president of Transparency International Nepal. She got elected to this prestigious post on 4th January 2021 after years service at TIN in various other posts. Ms. Pradhananga had completed her master's degree in humanities and bachelor's degree in education, food and nutrition from Tribhuvan University. She started the social work since 1980, being associated with the underprivileged children's education program in Nepal till 1993. After spending a few years in social work via different organizations, she founded Sashakti Nepal Party, realizing a need of women's active role in the establishment of New Nepal, with an objective of building peaceful, transparent, and prosperous country, having one law and equal rights for the citizens. She has joined Professional Women's Support Group, a wing of Transparency International Nepal in 2004. Ms. Pradhananga is advocating for good governance, being a part of Transparency International Nepal since March 2009 in different capacities, Treasurer from September 2014 to 2016, Secretary General from October 2016 to September 2018. She's also affiliated with various volunteer organizations representing different sectors. Floor is yours, ma'am.
Namaskar. Can I start?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. नमस्कार आयोजक मित्र र सहभागी मित्रहरुमा म चाहिँ नेपालीबाट बोल्दैछु ट्रान्सपेरेन्सी इन्टरनेशनल नेपालको तर्फबाट चाहिँ मलाई केही कुरा राख्न समय दिनु भएकोमा त्यसलाई चाहिँ धन्यवाद दिन चाहन्छु भ्रष्टाचार नियन्त्रणको एजेन्डामा विगत 26 वर्षदेखि कार्यरत त्यही नेपालले नागरिक पहरेदारीको भूमिका खेल्दै आएको छ आजको विषय सुशासन राष्ट्रको विकासको आधार भन्ने रहेको छ हाल देश चाहिँ हाल सुशासनको अवस्था नाजुक रहेको छ संविधानको निर्माण र झण्डै 2/3 सरकार आएपछि जनताले संस्थागत सुशासन बढेर जाने भन्ने जाने, सङ्घीय संरचना सुदृढ हुने र आम नागरिकको जीवनमा सकारात्मक प्रभाव पर्ने भनेर गरेको अपेक्षा चाहिँ कार्यान्वयन भएन र सुशासन प्रवर्धनलाई राष्ट्रिय एजेन्डाकै रूपमा अङ्गीकार गरिनु पर्दछ र सुशासन कायम राख्ने संस्थाहरूलाई बलियो राख्नु पर्दछ भन्ने हाम्रो माग पनि हो। राजनीतिक दलहरूको खिचातानी, केन्द्र र प्रदेशहरूमा सरकार परिवर्तनको खेलको परिणाम, वर्तमान अवस्थामा भ्रष्टाचार नियन्त्रण र सुशासनको एजेन्डामा राजनीतिक प्रतिबद्धता रहन सकेको छैन। हालांकि सबै पूर्व प्रधानमन्त्रीज्यूहरू र अहिलेको प्रधानमन्त्रीज्यूहरूले जिरो टलरेन्सको कुरा गर्नुहुन्छ, तर उहाँहरूले चाहिँ सुशासनको एजेन्डालाई अगाडि बढाउन सकिरहेको चाहिँ हामीले महसुस गरिरहेका छैनौँ। संवैधानिक निकायहरूमा सरकार र दलको प्रभाव देखिएको छ। सरकार गठन भएको 2.5 महिना भइसक्यो तापनि सरकारले पूर्णता पाइ नसकेको अवस्थामा राज्यको धेरै महत्त्वपूर्णहरू थाँतिरहेको छ। अब सरकार र अरू साझा गठबन्धनका सबै राजनेताहरू चाहिँ आफ्नै दलको काममा व्यस्तता छ। राज्यको लागि कुन महत्त्वपूर्ण राज्यको सम्पूर्ण एजेन्डाहरू ओझलमा परिरहेको सबैले महसुस गरिरहेकै छ। सरकार गठन यत्रो महिना भइसक्दा पनि तर सरकार गठन गर्ने कुनै पनि उहाँहरूको जाँगर देखिएन। त्यसकारणले अब मैले चाहिँ देशमा नीतिगत भ्रष्टाचारहरू बढिरहेको अवस्थामा चाहिँ के भएको छ त भनेर महत्त्वपूर्ण कुराहरू चाहिँ राख्न चाहन्छु। हालै सार्वजनिक भएको महालेखा परीक्षक कार्यालयको 58औं प्रतिवेदनले बेरोजगारीको स्थिति भयावह देखाएको छ, खर्बौं बेरोजगार देखाएको छ। सार्वजनिक भएको महालेखा परीक्षक कार्यालयको 58औं प्रतिवेदनले बेरोजगार फर्छोट सम्बन्धमा सदन र सरकारको ध्यान नपुगेको र मन्त्री परिवर्तनसँगै सचिव परिवर्तन हुने परिपाटीले बेरोजगार फर्छोटमा असर परेको देखाइएको छ। बेरोजगार खर्बौं रुपियाँमा पुगेको छ। 1 बेरोजगार नियमित गर्नुपर्ने, 2 पेस्की फर्छोट गर्नुपर्ने, 3 असुल उपर गर्नुपर्ने सबै कार्यान्वयन भएको देखिएन। कर र बक्यौता असुली नहुनु, ठुला करदाताहरूलाई राजस्वमा छुट कटौती मिना गर्नुका साथै जनप्रतिनिधिहरूले नियमावली बनाई आफू खुसी खर्च, फिजुल खर्च, निजी सामान किन्नु, पैसा बाँड्नु आदि इत्यादिले खर्च वृद्धि हुनु र अनुत्पादक काममा बढी खर्च भएको देखिएको छ भने अबन्डा बजेट छुट्याएरै रकमान्तर गरिएको पनि देखियो। अर्बौं रुपियाँ त घाँस काट्नुमा मात्र खर्च गरेको देखियो। बजेटमा वैदेशिक ऋण र अनुदान बढी देखाइएको छ। देश चलाउनलाई वैदेशिक ऋण र अनुदानले देश चाहिँ चल्दैन भन्ने उहाँलाई कन्टिन्युअसली वैदेशिक ऋण र अनुदानबाट देश चलाउनलाई हाम्रो बजेटमा देखाइन्छ। देशमा व्यापक आर्थिक अनियमितता भएको जनगुनासो छ। कर्मचारीहरू मात्र होइन, जनप्रतिनिधिहरू पनि आर्थिक अनुशासन तोड्न प्रतिस्पर्धामा छन्। नीतिगत भ्रष्टाचारले देशका आक्रान्त भएको छ। कोभिड-19 महामारीको असर गत वर्षभन्दा यस वर्ष धेरै देखिएको छ। महामारीको व्यवस्थापन र स्वास्थ्य सामग्रीहरूको खरिदमा भ्रष्टाचार र अनियमितता भएको छ भन्ने जनगुनासो बढ्दो रूपमा छ। संवैधानिक निकायहरूमा सरकार र दलको प्रभाव देखिएको छ। सरकार परिवर्तनको खेलले मुलुकको स्रोत साधन महामारी नियन्त्रणमा सही रूपमा प्रभावकारी रूपमा प्रयोग नहुने हो कि भन्ने आशंका समेत उब्जिएको छ। अर्को कुरा अख्तियार दुरुपयोग अनुसन्धान आयोगको, मैले चाहिँ यो व्यवस्थापिका, कार्यपालिका, न्यायपालिकातिर गइरहेको छु। अख्तियार दुरुपयोग अनुसन्धान आयोगको 2048औं तेस्रो संशोधन विधेयक 2076 र भ्रष्टाचार निवारण ऐन 2059 पहिलो संशोधन विधेयक 2076 हालसम्म पारित भएको छैन। जुन विधेयकमा कूटनीतिक भाषा प्रयोग गरेको छ। हाम्रो चाहिँ संविधानदेखि नै कुनै पनि विधेयक, नियम, कानुनहरू सबै नै दोधारे भाषामा गरिएको छ र त्यसमा पुरा छिद्रहरू राखिएको हुन्छ र त्यो छिद्रलाई नै प्रयोग गरेर भ्रष्टाचार बढिरहेको छ र भ्रष्टाचार निवारण ऐनको दफा 16 मा जुनसुकै व्यवहारबाट अवकाश प्राप्त गरेको भए तापनि अवकाश भएको मितिले 5 वर्षभित्र निज उप यस ऐन बमोजिम कारबाही गर्न वा मुद्दा चलाउन बाधा पर्ने छैन भन्ने उल्लेख गरिएको छ। यसरी भ्रष्टाचारीहरूलाई ढिलो कारबाही गर्ने, प्रक्रिया लामो बनाउने, कम सजाय, कैद र न्यूनतम जरिवाना रकमको जरिवानाको साथै उन्मुक्तिको सम्भावना धेरै हुने भएको हुँदा आजको परिवेशमा यस्तो विधेयक बनाउँदा नागरिक समाजको पनि उपस्थिति आवश्यक देखिएको छ। अनि भर्खरै न्याय क्षेत्रमा हुने अनियमितता, भ्रष्टाचार र बिचौलियाबाट हुन सक्ने क्रियाकलाप रोकथामका लागि चाल्नुपर्ने उपायका सम्बन्धमा अध्ययन गर्न गठित समितिको प्रतिवेदन सार्वजनिक भएको छ, जसमा न्यायाधीश नियुक्तिको सिफारिसदेखि नै न्यायालयमा विकृति र विसङ्गतिको प्रारम्भ हुने भन्दै त्यसमा सुधार गर्नुपर्ने सुझाव समेटिएको थियो भने इजलास गठन र मुद्दाको पेशी टोक्ने विद्यमान पद्धतिबाट समेत भ्रष्टाचार बढेको भन्दै समितिको विभिन्न सुझाव प्रतिवेदनमा उल्लेख गरेको छ। भनेपछि न्याय सेक्टरमै यस्तो छ भने हामीले यदि केही भएको खण्डमा कहाँबाट न्याय प्राप्त गर्ने भन्ने कुरा पनि आउँछ। अब नीतिगत भ्रष्टाचारले धेरै पहिलेदेखि नै देश आक्रान्त भएको थियो र हालसम्म पनि झन्झन बढिरहेको छ यो मात्रा। यी कुराहरू त्यहीबाट जारी सिपिआई र जिसिबीको सर्वेक्षणले प्रमाणित गरेको छ। राजनीतिक र प्रशासनिक भ्रष्टाचारले नेपाल अति भ्रष्ट मुलुकको रूपमा सूचीकृत भएको छ। सुशासन नै कुनै पनि राष्ट्रको विकासको एक प्रमुख पूर्वाधार हुने कुरामा कुनै शङ्का छैन। विहङ्गम रूपमा सुशासनका लागि चाहिँ निम्न केही विषयहरूतर्फ ध्यान दिनु जरुरी छ भन्ने मलाई लागेको छ। सर्वप्रथम त देश विकास र सुशासन कायम राख्न राजनीतिक प्रतिबद्धता नै हुनुपर्दछ। राजनीतिक प्रतिबद्धता बिना कुनै पनि देश सुशासनमा जान सक्दैन र भ्रष्टाचार नियन्त्रण गर्न सकिँदैन। राजनीतिमा गएर सरकार चलाउनु भनेको नै सुशासन कायम गर्नको लागि हो भन्ने मूल मर्मका साथ हुनुपर्छ भन्ने हाम्रो मान्यता हो। पारदर्शिता, उत्तरदायित्व, जवाफदेहिता, देश र जनताप्रति केन्द्रित हुनुपर्छ राजनीतिज्ञहरू, यो नै मूल कुरा हो। त्यसपश्चात भ्रष्टाचार, अनियमितता आदिलाई न्यून गर्न नियन्त्रणमुखी संयन्त्र सशक्त, निष्पक्ष र प्रभावकारी हुनुपर्दछ। त्यस्तै सार्वजनिक सेवाको व्यवस्थापन नागरिक र पिछडिएका वर्गलाई लक्षित गरी गरिनु पर्दछ। सरकारको काम कारबाही निष्पक्ष र पारदर्शी रूपमा सम्पन्न हुनुपर्दछ। निजी क्षेत्रमा संस्थागत सुशासनसहित स्वच्छ प्रतिस्पर्धात्मक वातावरण प्रवर्धन गरिनु पर्दछ। लोकतन्त्रका प्रमुख र आधारभूत संरचनाहरूमा सङ्गठनात्मक सुधार जारी रहनु पर्दछ। न्यायिक स्वतन्त्रता, सदाचार र क्षमता वृद्धि गराउन सरकारबाट पहल हुनुपर्दछ। स्थानीय निकायबाट गरिने सेवा र राजस्व परिचालन थप जवाफदेही बनाइनुपर्छ। सुशासनका विविध आयामबारे विद्यालय स्तरबाटै शिक्षा सुरु गरिनुपर्दछ। समय समयमा सार्वजनिक सेवा प्रवाह र सरकारको काम कारबाही बारे नागरिकहरूको धारणा सर्वेक्षण गरी अपेक्षित सुधार गर्नुपर्छ। आर्थिक विकास, लक्षित बजेट र दीर्घकालीन योजना बनाइदा समानुपातिक पहुँचलाई आधार बनाइनु पर्दछ। कानुनी शासनको प्रत्याभूति दिलाउने कार्य उच्च राजनीतिक र प्रशासनिक व्यक्तिहरूबाट हुनुपर्दछ। दात्री निकायबाट सहयोग हुने विकास निर्माणमा सार्वजनिक खरिद प्रक्रियालाई विशेष अनुगमन गरिनु पर्दछ। उपरोक्त सुशासनका विषयमा यथोचित ध्यान दिन सके देशले प्रगतिको बाटोतर्फ पाइला चाल्न सक्ने भन्ने मेरो विश्वास रहेको छ। अब अस्ति नै भर्खरै अर्थ मन्त्रालयद्वारा एउटा विज्ञप्ति निकालिएको थियो। त्यो विज्ञप्तिमा अलिकति भाषा चाहिँ दोधारे भाषा, दुई अर्थी लाग्ने भाषाहरू र विवाद अलिकति भएको भाषा भएको छ। त्यसमा चाहिँ अनि टिआई नेपालले जुन एउटा अर्को विज्ञप्ति निकाल्यो त्यसमा चाहिँ गैर कानुनी रूपमा मुलुकभित्र वा बाहिर उच्च राजनीतिक प्रशासनिक र व्यावसायिक व्यक्तिहरूबाट भ्रष्टाचार वा कलछली गरी लुकाइएको कालो धन वैध बनाउन सहयोग पुर्याउने यो प्रस्ताव स्वीकृत भएमा यसले भ्रष्टाचारलाई प्रशय दिने, कर छली बढाउने, नियमित करदातालाई निराश बनाउने, कालो धन सम्पत्ति शुद्धिकरण तथा निर्मलीकरण हुन जाने र नीतिगत भ्रष्टाचारको नमुना हुने निश्चित छ। यो कार्य नेपालको संविधानको भावना, अन्य कानुन र भ्रष्टाचार विरुद्धको अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय प्रतिबद्धताको विपरीत पनि हुन जान्छ भनेर हामीले निकालेका थियौँ। र त्यो निकाल्दै पनि जुन पूर्वाधारहरूको क्षेत्रमा लगानी गर्दा लगानीको आय स्रोत खोजिने छैन भन्ने व्यवस्था 2078 असोज 4 गते गरेका थियो। त्यो चाहिँ नेपाल सरकारको अर्थमन्त्रीद्वारा संसदमा पेश गरेको आर्थिक आयकन 2058 को संशोधन प्रस्तावमा अवैध धन वैधानिक बनाउने भित्री उद्देश्य लिएर जुन गरेको छ त्यो चाहिँ हामीलाई मान्यता छैन र यो सम्बन्धी चाहिँ अलि धेरै कुनै पनि कसैले पनि यसमा आवाज उठाएन। किनभने अहिलेसम्म जुन मुलुकले तिर्न बाँकी खर्बौं रुपियाँ पनि देखाइएको छ र पोलिसी करप्सनमा चाहिँ हामीले भन्नुपर्दा व्यापार घाटा भयो भनेर ढुङ्गा किट्टी बालुवा आदि निकासी गर्न पनि दिने, जुन आएर इलेक्ट्रिक भेहिकललाई चाहिँ प्रमोट नगर्ने भयो। यीहरू सबै हामीले चाहिँ थाहा पाउन सकिन्छ कि पोलिसी करप्सन कस्तो हुन्छ। पोलिसी बनाएर करप्सन गर्दाखेरि सानो जनताहरूलाई थाहा हुँदैन र एजुकेटेडहरूलाई मात्र थाहा हुन्छ कि यहाँ पोलिसी करप्सन भएको छ भनेर। र मुलुकले तिर्न बाँकी खर्बौं रुपियाँ छ, व्यापार घाटा भइरहेको छ भनेको छ, कुनै डेभलपमेन्ट भएको छैन र त्यो पैसा कहाँ गयो र त्यो पैसाहरू सबै अब स्विस ब्याङ्कमा नेपालीहरूको पैसा छ भन्ने कुराहरू पनि आइरहेको छ। र अझ 2019 भन्दा 2020 दोब्बर भएको छ भन्ने पनि आइरहेको छ। र अहिले आएर फेरि यो लगानीको आय स्रोत पूर्वाधारका क्षेत्रमा लगानी गर्दा लगानीको आय स्रोत खोजिने छैन भन्ने जुन कुराहरू आइरहेको छ यो चाहिँ संस्थागत भ्रष्टाचारबाट चाहिँ कमाएको पैसा व्हाइट मनी बनाउन लागिरहेको छ भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ हामीलाई लागिरहेको छ। र यस्तो कामहरू हुँदाखेरि पनि कोही नबोल्ने र भ्रष्टाचार विरुद्धको लागि नलाग्दाखेरि कुनै पनि देश विकास हुन्छ जस्तो लाग्दैन। देशले ऋण लिइरहने विकासको लागि भनेर पैसा खर्च गर्ने तर कुनै पनि अगाडि गएको छैन। त्यसकारणले यदि सुशासन कायम राख्ने हो भने प्रत्येक नागरिकको पनि उत्तिकै भूमिका रहन्छ। सुशासन र भ्रष्टाचार नियन्त्रणको अभियानमा सबै जुटौँ भन्दै मेरो यो छोटो मन्तव्य यही टुङ्ग्याउँछु। यहाँहरूको केही जिज्ञासा भए समाधानको प्रयत्न गर्दछु। र कुनै पनि राज्यमा सुशासन प्रणालीलाई सुदृढ पार्न सक्यो भने मात्र देश विकास हुनेछ, अन्यथा कुनै पनि विकासका लक्ष्यहरू समेत पुरा नहुने देखिन्छ। त्यसकारणले भ्रष्टाचार विरुद्धको अभियानमा प्रत्येक जनताहरू लाग्नुपर्छ र प्रत्येक सङ्घ संस्था र प्रत्येक व्यक्ति नलागिकन त्यसमा पनि छन् यो 52% महिलाहरू छ। महिलाहरू नै पनि अगाडि नबढिकन चाहिँ नेपालमा भ्रष्टाचार नियन्त्रण हुन सकिँदैन र सुशासन कायम हुन सकिँदैन। सुशासन कायम नभएको खण्डमा चाहिँ पोलिसी करप्सनहरू भइरहन्छ, देश विकास हुँदैन। यसको ज्वलन्त उदाहरण चाहिँ अहिले हामीले ग्लोबल वार्मिङबाट जुन इफेक्टहरू आइरहेको छ त्यो हामीले भोगि नै रहेका छौँ। यति भन्दै म आफ्नो मन्तव्य यही टुङ्ग्याउँछु र केही प्रश्नहरू छ भने चाहिँ पाऊँ म त्यसको जिज्ञासा मेटाउने प्रयास गर्दछु। हस्त नमस्कार।
Very, very dhanyavad, ma'am. Thank you so much for explaining the role of women in corruption and governance. Now, continuing, may I now invite next panelist, Mr. Akimitsu Okubo, Senior Representative of Zaika Nepal Office. Mr. Okubo started his career at Japan International Cooperation Agency, Zaika, since 1998. During his professional works in Japan and in other countries, he had gained a lot of experience in legal sector cooperation, particularly as Director of Law and Justice Team of Governance Group of Zaika headquarters in Tokyo from 2014-2018. He was responsible in the formulation and management of legal projects not only in Nepal, but also in many nations, including Vietnam, Cambodia, Myanmar, and West African countries. On the other hand, in order to raise awareness of legal cooperation in the public, Mr. Okubo took initiatives in editing a publication titled Legal Cooperation in Japanese Style in 2017. Mr. Okubo arrived in Kathmandu in August this year and started his work putting more emphasis to promote governance cooperation between Japan and Nepal. He has a bachelor's degree in law from the University of Tokyo and a master's degree in law from Cornell Law School. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you, Ms. Purnima, for introducing me. Namaste to all of you. And Mr. Mohan Krishna Shrestha, a founder and president of CDD. Thank you for allowing me to attend this webinar. I hope my voice is being heard.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can hear you clearly.
Thank you very much. Today, I am a little bit nervous because I don't have any scholarly or any other particular achievement in the past. But from the practitioner's point of view, I would like to introduce JICA's legal sector cooperation and its culture of side-by-side. I am going to use a slide. My slide is shared now.
Yes, sir. We can see your slides.
Okay, thank you very much. So today my title is JICA's Legal Sector Cooperation Culture of Side-by-Side. My name is Okuba Kimitsu. I joined in JICA in 1998 and having experience of legal sector cooperation in Nagoya, which is a central part of Japan, and Beijing, and Law and Justice Team of Governance Group in JICA headquarters. And I just assigned as senior representative of Nepal this August. Today, I am going to make a presentation of general picture of legal sector cooperation of JICA and its characteristics, because it's one of the main tools of governance cooperation to partner countries by Japan. So what is JICA? JICA stands for Japan International Cooperation Agency. It's an implementation body for Japanese ODA, and it's mainly under the auspice of Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan. And ODA stands for Official Development Assistance. It's development assistance by government for other developing countries. ODA covers wide range of sectors, from infrastructure to agriculture, health, education, and so on. Japanese ODA started more than 50 years ago. It's a long history. It has a long history. Let me talk about the cooperation of legal sector. Legal sector cooperation is not much known even in Japan because its history is relatively new. It started in mid-1990s. Socialist countries started to introduce market economy after the end of Cold War. They requested developing countries and international organizations to support legislations for their transition. So JICA's first legal project was for Vietnam, which started in 1996. After that, the number of our partner countries increased. Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Indonesia, China, and Western African countries, and more. And for Nepal, our legal project started in 2009. So let me introduce how to conduct our legal sector cooperation. We support drafting laws, and we train human resources of our partner countries like lawyers, officials, judges, and prosecutors. And we support so that the law made takes root in our partner countries by, for example, publishing explanatory notes or holding seminars of the new law. And we dispatch Japanese legal experts to our partner countries. We dispatch lawyers, prosecutors, and judges. And those commitments are backed up by prestigious scholars in Japan, or Japan Federation of Bar Associations, Ministry of Justice of Japan, or Supreme Court of Japan and other institutions. And JICA having a section which is called Law and Justice Team in Tokyo functions as a hub for those commitments. I would like to introduce you about JICA's culture for legal sector cooperation, which I would like to call side-by-side, yorisogata in Japanese. Law includes values such as freedom, human rights, and equality, and so on. But how to institutionalize those values differs from country to country. It may take time to adopt some specific legal institution. And Japanese people know those facts through its own history of modernization. When Japan changed its isolation policy at the end of the 19th century and started to have diplomatic ties with Western nations for the first time, it started to adopt modern legal system because it was a precondition to gain equal status in commercial treaties with those Western countries, such as jurisdiction over foreign nationals and right of tariffs. Those items were not included in those treaties because Japan was regarded as not developed to be equal. So in order to gain equal status, we had to introduce Western legal system. But in the process, social friction occurred when it tried to introduce Western systems to Japanese traditional society. Civil code debate, which happened 1889 through 1892, is widely known. When the Japanese government promulgated its first civil code, it was modeled after the French code. But some scholars and politicians opposed to it, saying it does not match the Japanese traditions. So at last, the code was replaced with a new civil code. Like this, JICA understands that it takes time for a new law to take root in a society, especially when new values are introduced. Besides, as a development cooperation agency, we, JICA, recognizes that ownership is inevitable in every sector from infrastructure to education. Therefore, in legal sector as well, the same posture is adopted. The JICA side suggests and proposes options of legal institutions for drafts, but it respects the final decision of the partner countries in the end. Such a culture of side-by-side, standing side-by-side is rooted in JICA and the legal professionals backing it up. Then how is it working? Let me show you an example in Nepal. JICA's legal sector cooperation in Nepal. It started for drafting civil code in 2009. Nepal then had Muluki Ain, its national code. Muluki Ain was made 1853, so it was mainly based on Hindu religion and philosophy. Muluki Ain was revised in 1963 to be secular, but civil and criminal laws were mixed, so it was not useful for the people of Nepal. The government of Nepal started to work to divide Muluki Ain into 5 codes: civil code, civil procedure code, criminal procedure code, and sentencing act. And Japan was asked by the Nepali government to give advice for civil code, and UNDP was for the rest of 4. So why was JICA requested for civil code cooperation? The Nepali side had known of JICA's cooperation in Cambodia, where it supported drafting their civil and civil procedure code. The Nepali side was aware that the style of JICA was to pay attention to Cambodian social and cultural backgrounds at the time of drafting. So besides, it was known that Japanese laws are codified and its systems are hybrid, referring to both continental law and common law. As Nepali is a country of codified law, it found common characters in Japanese systems. These were the triggers to contact JICA from the Nepali government. How did JICA support the Nepali government? So JICA organized an advisory group headed by Professor Matsuo Hiroshi from Keio University. He is a very prestigious professor in Japan in the field of law and development. Every one of more than 700 articles of the draft were studied one by one and commented by advisors of the advisory group. new concepts were included in the draft. New concept of civil code was included in the draft, such as will system, which I'm going to explain later, unjust enrichment, tort, usufruct, servitude, and so on. While the Constituent Assembly of Nepal was not open during May 2012 to December 2014, JICA did not suspend its support and kept dispatching JICA experts and edited explanatory note of the articles of the draft. Ms. Nagao Takako, Japanese lawyer, was dispatched to Nepal in 2015 as a JICA expert to Nepal. For her to support drafting, she participated in workshops held by the parliament in 15 cities nationwide of Nepal in 2016. What she did, she traveled to Calcutta and Ilam to the east, and Kanchanpur and Dipaya to the west. She participated in 5 time trips, and she listened to the voice of lawyers, officers, NGOs, and journalists in those cities within only 3 months. This indicates one of the styles JICA pursues to join the process of drafting itself as far as Nepali side allows. The JICA continues support, and finally, the Bill of Civil Code passed the parliament on 25 September 2017. So I would like to explain about the deleted articles from the draft, which was will system. So in the course of the deliberation in the parliament, an institution was deleted, which was called the will system. What is will system? In the will system, if you write a will, it's a document. Before your death, then your property will be disposed after your death according to the will. So your property will be divided on your own will. So, and this system was deleted in the course of deliberation in the parliament. Reason to delete: if the will system is realized, property of the deceased, the dead people, will be handed only to the eldest son, and as a result, daughters cannot have the share of it. Therefore, the will system is against the protection of women's rights. The existing partition system is better. The partition system is the system the properties are divided automatically, so to say, and your will doesn't matter, doesn't give any effect to the sharing. So actually, Ms. Nakao, Japanese lawyer, who was dispatched to Nepal, had heard the same criticism from locals in her trips all over Nepal. So she had known such a view was there in Nepal. So theoretically, the will system has an aspect to protect women's rights, because women, as the one who writes the will, can dispose their properties on their own as they like, and not to be restricted by partition system, which forces you to divide the property according to the law. But still, JICA side understood that in the context of Nepal, there is a superseding value in Nepali society not to adopt the will system at present. Therefore, it took a stance to respect the decision of the Nepali side. It never took it negatively. This is an example of our posture of side by side. Wrap up. If good governance is a prerequisite for national development, as today's theme says, legislation of civil code will surely dedicate to good governance, because it is an institution of legal institution of dispute resolution in the economy and the family based on the concept of equality of individuals. But the realization of a concrete institution depends on the decision of JICA's partner country, namely, in this case, Nepal. Without its ownership, the institution is not sustainable. That's what we recognize. In this sense, the deletion of the will system can be understood as a factor to contribute to the sustainability of Nepali civil code. Even though JICA supported the will system in the study of draft, it does not regard the deletion of the system negatively, again, because it is commonly understood in JICA that Japanese opinions should not be imposing, and take the posture of side by side is more helpful for the sustainability of law. Of course, if the Nepali side will start revision of the civil code in the future in any part, there are a lot of people in and around JICA who want to work again. I would like to supplement another fruit of cooperation. Supporting Nepali efforts to legislate the civil code produced another fruit, which is a sense of solidarity. Ms. Nagao, a Japanese lawyer who came to Nepal, writes an essay on her local trips all over Nepal as follows. Because the programs were conducted in Nepali language, I gained information through the interpretation from Nepali to English, which was the best I could do. Rather, people around me took care of me. I often felt guilty because I didn't dedicate to the programs. But after all the 5 local trips ended, a staff of Nepali Legislation Committee told me, lawmakers are very grateful to your efforts because you, JICA expert, participated in all the programs of consultation nationwide. Staffs of the secretariat of the committee are grateful too. At that moment, she writes, I realized the meaning of the trips like a sparkle. It was a surprise rather than a joy. As an expert from a foreign country, I cannot make a good relationship just by sitting in office. If I see, hear, and feel the same as my counterparts of Nepal see, hear, and feel, together with sharing the hardships and the joy, then I can get closer to working together rather than supporting them. After the trips, the relationship between me and Nepali staff was further strengthened. I am full of appreciation to all the staff of the Legislation Committee who say namaste all the time with a big smile. Of course, solidarity is not the purpose of legal sector cooperation itself, but it is also true if such a human relationship is made, that is a valuable asset of the 2 countries. If JICA makes constant efforts to support other nations' legislation of a law to take root with side-by-side posture, such efforts may lead to strengthening the relationship as a result. Now and from now. Lastly, let me introduce Ms. Isoi Miha. She is one of the audience today, who is an excellent Japanese lawyer currently dispatched to Nepal as JICA expert. She is now supporting the work of taking root of the civil code in Nepal. She is participating in discussions for the revision of the code with Nepali counterparts too. So please do not forget that JICA is standing by your side even now and from now. So thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you for listening, and I welcome your feedback later.
Thank you so much, sir. It's an honor and pleasure for us to have you and to listen to your presentation. धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद, sir. Namaste. Now, without any further delay, this session is, the second half of the webinar is for the Q&A. So the floor is open for questions. We'll take a few questions directed to the speakers. You can write your questions in the comment box of Facebook Live or in the chat box of Zoom, so that we'll take questions and direct it to the speakers. Do we have any questions? I'll check our Facebook Live. If there's any questions, I will put forward it to our speakers.
Can I put question?
Yeah, sure, sir. Sure.
I'm Kang Sakar.
Good evening, sir.
Question is to our Dr. Saab, Bishambar Pakurel. My question is that, as you said about the importance of action, right, among all those 6 factors and everything. So if we look at the past 32 years of our national development, it is confirmed that we are not doing as good as other similar countries like Bangladesh or Cambodia or Vietnam or even Sri Lanka or Myanmar. There are so many countries. So in that respect, my question to Dr. Saab is that, so what are those 1 or 2 factors which is retarding our action right? Why we could not do act as the government in Bangladesh or government in Cambodia? They are doing very, very fast development activities, Vikas Nirman, they are doing very good in trade and industry, but somehow we are lacking. So what are those factors? And my second question to Madam Padmini is that मैले सुनेको दक्षिण एसियामा सबभन्दा राम्रो चाहिँ एन्टी करप्सन ल हैन अख्तियारको ऐन चाहिँ दक्षिण एसियामा चाहिँ सबभन्दा राम्रो चाहिँ नेपालमा चाहिँ भने सुने त्यो हो कि होइन हैन उहाँले त यसमा धेरै उगरा हो हैन दोस्रो क्वेशन म्याडम पद्मिनीलाई के भने गत 9 वर्षको चाहिँ मैले चाहिँ ट्रान्सपरेन्सी इन्टरनेशनलको डेटा हेर्दाखेरि हैन गत 9 वर्षको नेपालले त धेरै राम्रो काम गरेको डेटाबाट देखियो त हैन 9 वर्ष अगाडि चाहिँ हामी 154 राष्ट्रमा परिरहेको थियो सीपीआई मा अब अहिले 113 मा पुग्यो हैन जम्प अफ 41 41 मार्क्स हामी बढाएर छ अरु मुलुकसँग जाँदाखेरि सबभन्दा बढी चाहिँ हामी नै यो 9 वर्षमा सबभन्दा बढी अचिभ गरेको नेपाल के यो कुरा कहीं पनि बाहिर आएन तर ठ्याक्क त्यसको उल्टो मात्र आइराछ कि नेपाल सबभन्दा भ्रष्ट मुलुक नेपाल सबभन्दा थोत्रो मुलुक हैन खाली नेगेटिभिटी चाहिँ हामी 3 करोड जनतालाई दिइराछ हैन त्यो डेटाले चाहिँ त्यो देखाउँदैन ट्रान्सपरेन्सी इन्टरनेशनलले यो कसरी भयो त्यो हैन उहाँले के प्रकाश पार्दिनुहुन्छ कि त्यो दुईटा क्वेशन
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the questions. So we'll start with Dr. Biswambar, sir.
This is a tricky scenario in Nepal. Let's speak in Nepali as well. This will be easy for most of us. It's not the question of not speaking in English. I feel equally comfortable because that's what I've been doing for the whole of my life. Your capital expenditure, let us give the example of capital expenditure. Capital expenditure, किन भएन भन्दाखेरि त्यहाँ पनि गभर्नेन्स चाहिँ आइपुग्छ जस्तो एउटा कुरा एक्जाम्पल के छ भने अख्तियारी दिइसकेर अब तिमीहरू गर यु आर अन योर ओन यु प्रिसाइसली नो द अब्जेक्टिभ टार्गेट्स र यसको फिजिबिलिटी स्टडी पनि भइसकेको प्रोजेक्ट हो यसको EIA गर्न पर्नेमा गरि पनि सकेको छ यो सबै क्लियर भएको हुनाले अब फास्ट ट्र्याकबाट जाने भन्छ नि कतिपय कुराहरू क्याबिनेटमा गरेपछि भोलि अन्त अख्तियार लाग्दैन म पनि त्यो समिट सारको यहाँ हुँदाखेरि इकोनोमिक डिक्लेरेसन गर्ने काठमाडौँ डिक्लेरेसन गर्ने कमिटीमा म पनि थिएँ मोदीजीलाई पनि के अरे बुलेट प्रुफ गाडी चाहियो पाकिस्तानको पीएमलाई पनि बुलेट प्रुफ चाहियो अब 3 महिना बाँकी छ अरबौं रुपैयाँ खर्च हुने भयो अब त्यो त्यत्रो बाटो बनाउनु छ बत्ती हाल्नु छ घडी हाल्नु छ ठाउँ ठाउँमा अनि त्यसले अब भ्याउने कुरा भएन आँट गर्ने कसैले पनि सक्ने कुरा आएन त्यसैले फास्ट ट्र्याकमा लगौँ भन्ने कुरा भयो त्यसपछि क्याबिनेट डिसिसन भयो क्वालिटी त के थियो वी अल नो थ्याङ्क्स गड कि अब उनीहरूले किनेन पनि पछि त मलाई थाहा भएन मोदीले आफ्नै लिएर आयो पाकिस्तानले आफ्नै लिएर आयो गाडी पनि यहाँ मण्डलामा गरेको घडी छडी पनि 2 महिनापछि त गइहाल्यो फुल रोपेको पनि फुल पनि गइहाल्यो बाटोको सिंहदरबार अगाडिको त्यो सबै भयो त्यसपछि यो खर्च किन हुन सक्दैन भन्ने कुरा एउटा चाहिँ नि हाम्रो पर्सेप्सन पनि अर्कै छ कुनलाई फास्ट ट्र्याकमा राख्ने कुनलाई नराख्ने अख्तियारी दिइसकेकोमा पनि खर्च भएन भने बुझ्दाखेरि हामीले गरेको स्टडीले पनि बुझ्दाखेरि मन्त्री र सचिवको 1-2 ठाउँमा मिसअन्डरस्ट्यान्डिङ जस्तो मेलम्ची नै भनौँ अनि सचिवको र कन्ट्र्याक्टरको मिसअन्डरस्ट्यान्डिङ अब त्यसमा पक्कै पनि लेनदेन नै हुनुपर्छ त्यसले गर्दा पनि हुन सकेन अब त्यो हुन सकेन हुन नसकेकोलाई पेनलाइज गर्नुपर्ने अख्तियारी दिएर पनि हुँदै हुँदैन भने त के कारणले भएन त्यसलाई अगाडि त बढ्नु पर्ने केस जस्तै गरी बेरुजी 4 खर्ब 18 अर्ब 85 करोड चान्चुनको बेरुजी अहिले महालेखा परीक्षकको अफिसबाट आएको छ रिपोर्टमा त्यसमा चाहिँ नि के छ त भन्दाखेरि कतिपय कुराहरू सर्टिफिकेट डिपोजिट नगरेको प्रमाण पेश नगरेको आफ्नो रिस्पोन्सिबिलिटी स्विच ओभर नगरेको अर्कालाई नदिएको अब शोध भर्नै कसैले लिया छैन काम भएको छ शोध भर्न ल्या छैन किन लिएन थाहा छैन त्यसले गर्दाखेरि पनि क्युमुलेटिभ बेरुजी एरियर्स चाहिँ नि स्काई रकेटिङ भएको छ। त्यसले नेपालको कन्टेक्स्टमा एनुअल बजेटको त कहिलेकाहीँ 35% अफ द एनुअल बजेट पनि बेरुजी भएको देखिन्छ। यसमा त कति पर्सेन्ट वी हेभ टु हेभ अ सर्ट अफ डिसएग्रिगेटेड इन्फर्मेसन। यो जुन कुरा भएको छैन नि, यो त हुने कुरा हो नि त। यो प्रमाण पेश गर्न सकिन्छ, जिम्मेवारी सार्न सकिन्छ, शोध भर्ना लिन सकिन्छ, तर के पनि नगरे के त राइट अफ गरिदिनु पर्यो, ल यो नगरे पनि हुन्छ भनेर एउटा त्यो देखियो। एउटा अब डोनरहरूले फरेन इन्भेस्टमेन्ट एन्ड टेक्नोलोजी ट्रान्सफर एक्ट फिटा भनेर धेरै ठाउँमा वन विन्डो भने पनि 1000 डोर्सहरू छ। वन विन्डोले काम गरेन भनेपछि त्यो वर्ल्ड ब्याङ्कको कन्सल्टेन्ट भएर मैले पनि काम गरिरहेको त्यो बेलामा देयर एडभाइजर। अनि एउटा होल डोनर कम्युनिटीले नेपालमा राखेर हामीले कन्सोलिडेटेड रेकमेन्डेसन्स बनाएर दियौँ। सचिवले मिटिङसँग पनि एटेन्ड गर्न खोज्नु भएन र मिटिङसँग पनि भएन, त्यो त्यसै थन्कियो। त्यसपछि क्यापिटल एक्सपेन्डिचर बढाउनु पर्यो भनेर डोनर कम्युनिटीले फेरि गभर्मेन्टलाई प्रेसर गर्यो। गभर्मेन्टको पनि हाई ऱ्याङ्किङ अफिसर बसेर कपाल अफ सेलेक्टेड डोनर कम्युनिटी पनि बसेर स्ट्यान्डर्ड अपरेसन प्रोसिज्योर भनेर बनाइयो। त्यसमा हरेक कुरा अघि जायकाको रिप्रेजेन्टेटिभले भने जस्तो हरेक कुराहरू लिगल प्रोभिजनहरू जे चाहिन्छ तपाईँलाई एभ्रिथिङ इज देयर। त्यो अनुसार कसैले काम गर्यो भने अख्तियार आउन सक्ने सम्भावना देखिँदैन, किनभने डोनर कम्युनिटीको पनि गभर्मेन्टको पनि कन्सेन्ससमा बनेको त्यो म्यानुअल हो। त्यो हामीसँग छ, त्यो स्ट्यान्डर्ड अपरेसन प्रोसिज्योर भनेर हामीसँग अलरेडी छ। अख्तियारी दिएको खर्च हुँदैन, स्ट्यान्डर्ड अपरेसन प्रोसिज्योर बनाएको छ सबैको सहमतिमा, त्यो अनुसार पनि खर्च हुन सक्दैन भनेपछि अनि टाइम ओभररन हुने, कस्ट ओभररन हुने। यो अप्पर तामाकोसीको केस लियो त अब सञ्चालनमा आइसक्यो। 556 मेगावाटको अप्पर तामाकोसी प्रोजेक्ट हेर्नुहोस्, 35 बिलियनमा बन्छ भनेको पछि 52 बिलियन फेब्रुअरीमा देखाइयो। अब अहिले आएर 80 बिलियन प्लस अब खर्च हुने भयो भन्दाखेरि कहाँ 35 बिलियन कहाँ 80 बिलियन। अब पाल्पा मिड हिल हाइवेको गति त्यही छ। अब त्यस्तै गरेर तपाईँको बुढीगण्डकी 1200 मेगावाटको प्रोजेक्ट हो। त्यसमा चाहिँ नि 1984 मा फिजिबिलिटी स्टडी भइसक्यो हो। अब लाइनको कम्पेन्सेसन दिइसकेको छ, काम केही पनि भएको छैन। कसलाई अकाउन्टेबल बनाउने? 750 मेगावाटको वेस्ट सेतीको कुरा गर्नुहोस्। अब कुन मोडलमा बनाउने भन्ने कुरो आजसम्म हामीलाई थाहा छैन। कुन मोडलमा बन्छ यो भन्ने नि थाहा छैन, चुप लाएर बसिरहेको सबजना। अब खै गभर्नेन्स भरि त गभर्नेन्स भन्दाखेरि यो कानुनको मात्र कुरा पनि होइन कि, त्यो मुलुकीहरूले बनाएर कानुन बनाएर यो सब गरेर हुँदैन। गभर्नेन्स भन्ने कुरा जुन डिफाइन हामीले ट्राई गऱ्यौँ त्यो अन्तर्गत हामीले केही गर्न सकेनौँ। अब अकाउन्टेबल कसले कसलाई बनाउने? सबै मिलेको छ नि त। यहाँ त अकाउन्टेबल हुनुपर्ने मान्छेहरू सबै मिलेको छ। त्यस कारण यो अब यो तपाईँ हामी त बुढो भइसक्यौँ भन्दा थाकेर है। अब के गर्ने हो, कसरी निकास आउँछ त्यसमा स्पेसल यो CDDले एउटा अब गभर्नेन्स सिस्टमले काम गरेन, कानुनी आधार पनि छ, अख्तियारी पनि छ, सम्पूर्ण चिज भएर पनि त्यो इन्डिकेटर्सले काम गरेन र मुलुकले सफर गर्यो, हामीले सफर गऱ्यौँ भन्ने कुराको लागि अब के गर्ने त भनेर 5-7 वटा केसहरू हामीसँग त्यो केसहरू पनि छ। यो साउथ एसियामा कतिवटा कन्ट्रीमा टाइम ओभररन हुँदाखेरि कति जान्छ। अब यहाँ त कस्तो छ भने नि राम्रै काम गरेको हामीलाई लाग्छ कि फलानु प्रोजेक्टले, त्यसको मल्टिप्लायर इफेक्ट के हो त भन्ने कुरो हामीले हेर्दैन। त्यो भन्ने बित्तिकै जार्गन युज गर्यो, यो इकोनोमिक्सले युज गर्ने शब्द हो भन्ने सन्दर्भमा हामीले त्यसलाई त्यो होइन। अब हाम्रो कति इन्भेस्टमेन्ट गरेको छौँ अनि त्यो इन्भेस्टमेन्टको अनुपातमा इकोनोमीमा त्यसले के इम्प्याक्ट पार्यो त भन्ने कुरा हेर्ने हो। अब इन्टरनल रेट अफ रिटर्न हरेक उद्योगपतिले आफ्नो उद्योगमा गरेको हुन्छ। अब हामीले हाम्रो परियोजनाहरूको इन्टरनल रेट अफ रिटर्न पनि हेर्न सकेका छैन। आउट अफ कति क्यापिटल एक्सपेन्डिचर आउटपुट कति भयो भनेर केही माइक्रो हाइड्रो प्रोजेक्टका हाम्रो उद्योगपतिहरूले आफ्नो इन्डस्ट्रीमा गरेको रेट अफ रिटर्नमा चाहिँ ग्लोबल एभरेज 8-12% छ, त्यसको 2 गुणा बढी पनि इन्टरनल रेट अफ रिटर्न भएको देखियो भने त्योभन्दा सुविधा प्राप्त गरेको गभर्मेन्टले नै सञ्चालन गरेको प्रोजेक्टमा पनि इन्टरनल रेट अफ रिटर्नको कुनै एक्सर्साइज नै गरिएको छैन भनेपछि अब यो गभर्नेन्समा हामीले कसलाई दोष दिने? सरकार नै सहभागी छ, सरकार स्टेबल छैन, एउटा गभर्मेन्ट आउँछ अर्को जान्छ, एउटा आउँछ अर्को जान्छ, मान्छे परिवर्तन हुन्छ। त्यस कारणले यसको लागि एउटा इन्टेलेक्चुअल डिस्कोर्स चाहिँ नि डिस्पाइट द फ्याक्ट द्याट वी हेभ, म बेला बेला भन्छु कि वी हेभ अ वर्ल्ड क्लास मोनिटरी पोलिसी, तर इट मिजरेबली फेल्स टु कन्टेन इन्फ्लेसन। देयर आर सम इयर्स when we had consecutively 7% growth यो GDP-मा, तर 7% ग्रोथ भएर इम्प्लोइमेन्ट एउटा पनि बढ्न सकेन, स्यालेरी वेज बढाएको छ, प्रोडक्टिभिटी बढ्न सकेन, पोभर्टीमा रिडक्सन भएको छ, इन्कम इनइक्वालिटी घट्न सकेन भन्दाखेरि ती इन्डिकेटरहरूले जे गर्नुपर्ने कुनै कुराले जेको लागि बनाएको गरेको त्यो भइराखेको छैन भनेपछि व्हाई द्याट हैज नट ह्यापन? त्यो भिसियस सर्कललाई तोड्नको लागि अब के गर्ने? कानुन बनाउनु, त कानुन त अलरेडी छ, त्यो पनि काम भइरहेको छैन भन्दाखेरि यो चाहिँ नि यो ट्रिकी क्वेसन पनि हो, यो गाह्रो पनि छ एन्सर गर्न भने मैले। त्यही भएर
Thank you so much, sir. Being mindful about the time, हामीसँग पछि टाइम भयो भने हामी अर्को पनि प्रश्न लिनेछौँ. So we'll further continue with the program. Now, may I invite Dr. Mitra Bandhu Paudel, Vice President of CDD and Principal of LECM, to sum up the webinar. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Purnima. Respected Chair, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed a very informative and productive webinar on good governance, a prerequisite for national development. Well, actually, the panelists, due to their extensive knowledge and experience, they really enlightened us on this globally discussed and implemented subjects. Governance is regarded as democracy intensifying concept that's perceived to build open, transparent, and accountable public administration. And most of the panelists were in line with this statement of Srivastava 2009. There are more than 18 types of governance found in literature, and many, some of the types of governance were highlighted by Professor Dr. Bisamar Pakurel, like public, private, global, non-profit, corporate, health, internet, are to name a few. So according to United Nations, good governance is measured by factors such as participation, rule of law, transparency, responsiveness, consensus-oriented equity and inclusiveness, effectiveness and efficiency, and accountability, which were highlighted by our panelists today. According to the report of Transparency International, Nepal is now placed 117th place with a score of 33 among 180 countries and territories surveyed in Corruption Perception Index. In 2019, it had ranked 113th place with a score of 34. So the situation, this data also says that there is high corruption perception in the public, mind in the current year also. So in our context, Commission for the Investigation of Abuse of Authority, CIAA, is an anti-corruption agency. This is unfortunate to note that CIAA has been criticized in Nepal. I'll give you two examples. Like February 10, 2020, Himalayan Times wrote the CIA is under government influence. Similarly, in July 24, 2020, Nepali Times made a headline, CIA traps small fish, lets big ones go. These are a few manifestations on criticism of CIA. In my view, exclusion of dissenting views in decision-making process, rampant corruption, selective approach of regulatory initiatives, lawlessness, irresponsible authorities, and blanket amnesty for ministers through ministerial decision-making process make huge obstacles in good governance. So in an ADV report of governance and institutional risks and challenge in Nepal, it has been noted that public financial management related challenges and risks such as fiscal indiscipline, disconnect between planning and budgeting, high fiduciary and corruption risks, and implementation of fiscal federalism in SNG, they term it. So in today's discussion, like Ambassador Mohan Krishna Shrestha highlighted the significance of good governance in nation development, and he gave some of the examples from the contemporary literature as well. So Professor Dr. Bisomar Pakurel started his remarks with the definition of the governance, the system by which an organization is controlled and people are made responsible. There are different forms of governance such as national, local, corporate, and so forth. The role of company management, board, and stakeholders are defined in corporate governance. He argues that how public institutions can manage public resources meaningfully, and citing the indicators of World Bank, UN, and ADB, he talked about sustainable development goal with the observation of ADB as well. So rule of law and control of corruption have positive effect on GDP. These are extremely important to drive economic growth. That was the main essence of his remarks. And Ms. Padmini Pradhananga talked about the policy corruption. Regulatory bodies are not much, strengthened. And to combat corruption, they talked about zero tolerance on corruption, but inaction is not as such. So political parties are not serious to combat corruption. So she highlighted and she gave so many examples of how pathetic situation is there in our country. So there are so much to do, and the existing law also has a lot of ambiguity in our existing law and regulations. So I mean, the bottom line is we need to combat this corruption. And our third speaker, Mr. Okubo, was highlighting the importance of the JICA, which is the implementation body for Japanese ODA, and he emphasized the JICA's legal sector cooperation by supporting and drafting laws backed by scholars, Japanese Federation of Bar Association, Supreme Court of Japan, and so on, and how JICA values the freedom and human rights and equality and institutionalize the values in the country. And he also gave comprehensive remarks how JICA helped legal sector in Nepal. So this was a really good discussion, and fighting corruption is not just good governance, it's self-defense, it's patriotism. With this note of the US President Joe Biden, I conclude my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now we are moving towards the end of the session. I would like to invite Mrs. Anita Jadari, advocate and promoter of CDD, for presenting the vote of thanks. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, can you please check your mic? I think it's on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you now.
Thank you so much, Moderator Ms. Purnima Subedi, respected Founder President of CDD Mohan Sir, panelist Professor Dr. Bisomar Pakurel, TIN President Ms. Padmini Pradhananga, Senior Representative of JICA Mr. Akimutsu Okubo, participants, friends, and well wishes. On behalf of Center for Development and Diplomacy and Development, I wish to take this opportunity to express our sincere thanks and appreciation to all the distinguished panelists, to all our guests and attendees of this webinar. As all of you know that CDD has been effortful to host seminars on different topics from time to time, and in particular webinars during the pandemic situations. As I do hope that our webinar has proceeded very smoothly and our distinguished speakers have made excellent presentation on the topic. We have listened to their ideas, facts, and figures, as well as ideas on ways forward in this regards. It has proved to be an excellent opportunity to know more about different aspects of good governance in our country and beyond. I would like to express my gratitude to all esteemed delegates of the webinar for their presence and contribution to make this webinar a great success. In fact, good governance is the need of the day. We need good governance in our everyday life and in different aspects of our life. It is the responsibility of the government to provide good governance in the country. If there is good governance, people can get good service and support in their life. Policymakers therefore need to make good policy decisions and implement them in efficient and effective ways to deliver good services to the people. Let me take this opportunity to thank our Vice President of CDD and Principal of Little Angels College of Management, Dr. Mitra Bandhu sir, Moderator Ms. Purnima Subedi, Rapporteur Ms. Anisma Gautam, and Technical Supporter Mr. Bojendra Mansaki for their persistent support to CDD and to this webinar. Moreover, I thank all those who have helped CDD directly or indirectly in hosting such webinars now and also in the past. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. With this, we have come to an end of this webinar. Thank you everyone for watching and participating. I'm sure this session has been fruitful and insightful to everybody. We hope to welcome you in other occasions when CDD will host similar webinars in the future. With this, thank you very much. Have a good evening. Namaste.